Well, after over a year, we finally have our biggest Pavlov Shack update. And they didn't disappoint with this update. This update has added a lot of stuff that Pavlov Shack has been desperately needing. But they've also made some very questionable changes as well. But before we get into it, make sure to shake that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. So starting us off, we're going to focus on the negatives of this update because there's a lot more positives than there are negatives. And one of the hugest L's of this update is the fact that they have removed gore. Yup, that's right, gore was added to the first RC just to be removed later down the line in RC3. But then you gotta realize gore on Pavlov Shack was a major performance hit. And as I'm sure you all know, RC1 was not the most stable build of Pavlov Shack. So for me personally, I'm fine with gore being removed from Pavlov Shack if the game runs better. But what I cannot possibly understand is why they removed ragdolls from the game and happened to replace it with the most bare bones mobile game looking animation I've ever seen. And some people say they like this new death animation, but for me personally, it just looks funky. Like, I can live without the gore in Pavlov Shack, but God, please bring back ragdolls in the next update. But yeah, that minor nitpick is the only negative that this update has to offer. So now, let's get to the positives and some of the coolest things that they've added into the game. First of all, since they removed gore and ragdolls, the game performs 10 times better. This is probably the smoothest version of Pavlov Shack I've ever played. But honestly, after playing RC1, I definitely prefer the performance over the gore. But what I would have to say is the biggest W out of this entire update is that they finally added the mod manager in Pavlov Shack. So now we can finally download and play custom maps without owning community servers. This is one of the first things I noticed about this update is that there were tons of custom maps, tons of lobbies. It was awesome. This makes RC3 one of the biggest updates we've had in a long time. This is a huge game changer. And now with this feature in the game, this is by far one of my favorite updates. And hopefully, as time goes on, we'll start to see more and more maps come out for Pavlov Shack. And that's just a couple of many new features that were added into the game. So now there's finally a brand new weapon in Pavlov Shack. And it's a brand new LMG, the PKM. Now this gun has been in the PC VR version for a while now, but it's great to see it in Pavlov Shack. And finally, we now have more variety in S&D for heavy weapons. But not only did we get a new weapon, everybody's favorite game mode TTT got an update as well. There are now 3 new roles in TTT. We have the zombie, the hypnotist, and the soulmate. The zombie role is pretty self-explanatory. When you're a zombie, you go around with a knife stabbing other players to turn them into zombies. The hypnotist is basically just a traitor with a new gadget. When you use this gadget on a dead innocent, it turns that player into a traitor and brings them back to life. And the soulmate is definitely the weirdest out of the 3. As a soulmate, you are bound to a random player, and if that player dies, then you die as well. These are definitely some very interesting new roles in TTT, and I'm very excited that they are in the game. But while we're on the topic of game modes, they finally added prop hunt back into the game. And it actually works incredibly well this time. But the only downside is that it only works on a couple of maps. But I'm still extremely excited that it's finally in Pavlov Shack. They also added a new game mode, King of the Hill, which has been in Shack for a while, but you've only been able to play it through community servers. So now finally you can host your own King of the Hill lobby. And it's a World War II only game mode, and whoever controls the hill for the longest wins the match. They've also added some new things into the hide game mode. They added some loot boxes around the map that gives you some more equipment instead of you just having to aimlessly wander around until you find the creature. And they have also buffed and nerfed some things, but I won't get into the specifics of that. But also, speaking of buffs and nerfs, they've also changed all the guns in the game. But again, I won't get into specifics because I want to keep this video simple. Just know that if your favorite gun isn't doing as much damage as it originally did, then there's a reason for that. But there are also some other minor changes as well, such as the smoke grenade getting a new effect for the 3rd time in a row. And personally, I think this is the best iteration of the smoke grenade that Pavlov Shack has seen. The smoke grenade finally feels balanced. They also completely overhauled the main menu. The game now starts with a startup screen. And now there's finally also music in the main menu. And personally, I feel like the music in the main menu fits the game perfectly. It adds a nice layer of immersion. And now there's also new comfort settings for players who get motion sick in VR. You can finally put a vignette on while the player is moving. And once again, this is great for players who get motion sick while playing VR games, and allows more people to play Pavlov Shack. Another Another minor change that they made was for competitive in Pavlov Shack. When you die, now instead of being in a dark room just staring at nothing, you're in this little bunker area, and it's a lot nicer than what we had before. But now let's get back into some of the more bigger changes. Most of the maps that were in Pavlov Shack have been completely overhauled, and the map with the most changes was Siberia. Now Siberia on Pavlov Shack completely matches the Siberia we have on PC VR and PlayStation VR 2. And some other maps, for example, Bunker got a bunch of lighting changes, so now the map is a lot brighter. But not only did we get map changes, we got a whole brand new map. And this map is Industry. Now this map has been in the PC VR version of Pavlov for a while now. But still, we got an entire brand new map for Pavlov Shack. And I'm sure, as you all know, we've been needing variety in maps for Pavlov Shack. And once again, with this update, we have the ability to host custom maps without owning a community server. So now we don't even have to wait on Bankrupt Games to release a new update to get new maps. And like I said, that's the biggest game changer of this update. But still, it's very nice to see Industry ported over to Pavlov Shack. It's a great map, one of my personal favorites. And getting off topic here, they finally added new player models to TTT. Now, originally in RC2, these player models were meant to be in S&D and Deathmatch, just like the PC VR version of the game. Because for the most recent update in the PC VR version, they added new player models into the game. So I don't know if this is cut completely from the game or if they're just taking their time to implement these new player models. But anyways, yeah, there's new skins for TTT in Pavlov Shack. Now hopefully for the next update we actually get these player models in S&D and Deathmatch, because I'm definitely a fan of the newer player models. They add a lot of variety. But yeah guys, those were most of the major changes that RC3 has added into Pavlov Shack. But don't get me wrong, there are still so many smaller changes that the devs have been working on. I just didn't feel the need to include them in this video because they're so slight and insignificant. For example, there's new sound effects when you drop your guns on the ground based on how heavy the weapon is. And I mainly wanted to cover the big changes that are in RC3. But while we're at it, I also want to talk about the future of Pavlov Shack. In my opinion, the game's future is finally looking bright, due to the fact that the developers were able to push out this update only a month after they updated the PC VR version of the game. It finally feels like Bankrupt Games actually cares again, and it's great. This new RC update has more features than any other update and also performs better. But once again, my one and only complaint is the fact that ragdolls were removed from the game and replaced with the most weird animation. But other than that, this update is a must-have if you play Pavlov Shack. And in my opinion, it's one of the best updates that we have received for Pavlov Shack in a long time. But anyways guys, let me know what you think about RC3 down in the comments below. I'm really excited to see what you guys have to say. Also, don't forget to shake that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. But anyways guys, peace out.